Hey everybody, it's Professor Snart again, checking in. A bit of a follow-up from my welcome email from the other day, which you can see down here in our announcements area. So what you'll be seeing is obviously this announcement that I'm doing above the initial welcome announcement. This one a little more typical of the kind that I'll do moving forward, where I'm talking, but obviously we're looking at our course. So one of the most important things for being successful, particularly in the online format, is just getting comfortable with how the course is set up and basic navigation, which is kind of what I'm going to point us to or walk us through right now. So my goal is to make everything as transparent as possible so that we don't have either really important information that's buried within folders within folders. So you'll notice that our course menu is relatively long and will also be a little bit flexible. So once, for example, we've gotten past the student homepage assignment, you'll notice that it will migrate down and we'll have new things that rise up. So some of the things will always be there, like basic sort of contact or email stuff, textbook info, your grade, access to your grades, and that basic stuff like that. But a little bit of it will kind of shift depending on what we're actually doing. So clearly it might not look exactly like this if we're a week or two in advance. So for our purposes, really the most important areas of the course will be our due dates and then the units, which is like the actual work for the course. Everything else on our list is either, again, just kind of generic help or contact info, or is going to be referred to like how the workshops work, a note on feedback, will be referred to within units once we actually get to that material. You can get visit the syllabus early on, not something that we're going to return to. Again, pretty generic stuff, right? Course description, course goals, our textbook that we'll be using, all that kind of stuff. So nothing too major right there. The rules of creative writing, really important for us, and again, something that we'll refer to as part of the units, which we'll get closer to. You can certainly take a look at those now, but again, a kind of content area that we'll get to through the units rather than just sitting here as a menu item. Okay, so the due dates themselves. Again, we've had our start of the term, Tuesday, May 31st. We moved really quickly in the 5-week format, basically 3 times as fast as we might work in the fuller 16-week version. So all of our units are laid out here in terms of their a suggestion of their content, but also the due date itself. So I'm recording this on Wednesday, June 1st. We have our first due date coming up Thursday, June 2nd. Then we turn around next week, June 6th. And then we have, in the interest of moving a little bit quicker early on, we have both units 3 and 4 due on the same date, which is only a couple of days removed from June 6th. So one of the things that's really important is obviously to know what due date is right here in front of us, but also which ones are on the horizon, because often there's just a couple of days that'll separate those due dates. So all of the units are accessible right now, which means that even if you didn't jump into units 3 or 4 to actually start that work, it's certainly worth popping in to kind of gauge for yourself how long it might take, how you want to divide or manage your time most effectively. So even if you're not working ahead, which I wouldn't suggest necessarily, certainly be aware of what's ahead, if only those due dates, because they do come pretty quickly. Almost all of our units will depend on or feature a discussion board assignment of some kind. And so it's important to note that we have a kind of dual due date system for our discussion boards. So notice that initial posts are due by noon on the due date. So that would be like Thursday, June 2nd, 12 p.m. would be that initial post. And then replies due by the end of the day. So literally 11:59 p.m. But hopefully everybody isn't waiting until so late against the due date to finish up the assignment. Notice too that a lot of units will have more than just even what's listed here, but more than just a single thing to complete. There's often multiple tasks that we want to accomplish, whether it's a discussion board, a reading, a different kind of activity, visiting a website, watching a video. So there's usually more going on than just a single assignment that you can complete just in one single sitting, or that you'd really want to. I think it's better, more effective to divide your time. Okay, so that's our due dates. That'll lead us through the entirety of the course. As we get closer to our first workshop, which is our fiction workshop, I'll kind of remind people that you don't want to wait until, let's say, Wednesday, June 8th is done to start thinking about your short story. Maybe you can start really getting intensive about writing it, but notice that we'll be working up to that. So even now is a good time to be thinking about what kind of short story you'd want to write and getting the ball rolling and piecing it together and that kind of thing. Again, more reminders will follow, but don't let the workshop kind of surprise you after we finished Unit 4, and then all of a sudden you've got to turn around relatively quickly and write a whole short story. So due dates, very important. Okay, so now really our course is just you coordinating each of the units here with those due dates. So you can see them all listed. Again, you can pop into any of them just to see the content, not necessarily to work ahead, but to gauge, how you're going to manage your time effectively. And so a typical unit here for us will be like our introductions. I'll always try to lay out what we're actually doing in that unit, just so you have a sense of what our overall objectives are. And then all of the work will be contained or linked from each of the unit pages. That's why I say you rarely would have to go into these things without being directed from a unit, anything in our menu here. So a couple of things going on. You're creating your student homepage, which is a good way of us to just meet each other. You can be creative in the writing of that, but it's really just more a meet and greet type of a thing. The instructions here walk you through what to click and where and what you'll see going on. Maybe the screenshots change a little bit because they changed the Blackboard interface, but the basics are going to be here. So in addition to a text introduction of yourself, it's really, really important that you include a picture. And be sure you're doing it in the way that's suggested here, where you're inserting the picture right into the post. So it's not an attached file that we have to click and get to, which can be a little bit, it doesn't work as smoothly. So make sure that, again, you're doing that correctly. Most of the points for this assignment here are based on, did you make a good faith effort to really tell us about yourself, not just a quick couple of sentences, like a couple of minutes worth of work, and does that picture actually show up correctly? I've asked you some, basic questions here that you can follow, but you can certainly, branch off of these. Feel free to include links and images and other stuff going on, so it doesn't have to be just a text-based thing. And again, a lot of the grading, as with the course, is really not just are you meeting the bare minimum requirements here, like the shortest answer possible for each of these, just racing through. Are you making a really good faith effort? You can actually read a little bit about the grading and the grade breakdown here if you're interested. Okay, so that's it for that part. So again, remember that there's not just that to do in Unit 1. We also want to make sure that you've done the introductions discussion board. It's very similar. Again, it's going to feel a little bit repetitive, but because discussion boards are one of the main tools that we use throughout our course, I think it's really good to use one right away. For those who haven't done one or used one in Blackboard necessarily, just so you get used to kind of how they're laid out, where the buttons are, all that sort of stuff. So you're introducing yourself again, answering a few different questions, not just cut and pasting from the homepage assignment, but again, there is overlap, but it's sort of intentional overlap. So you're getting used to using this particular tool, which is going to feature throughout our course. Really important. Again, like I'd mentioned when we looked at the due dates, you'll have to do an initial post, right? That'll be due by the noon of that due date. But then in this case, you're replying to at least 2 other posts. You can always do more if you like. That's always fun. It's like getting mail. What used to be like getting mail, it's like kind of exciting when someone responds to your post. I know we don't want to admit that, but it is kind of cool. So those 2 would be due by like 11:59 p.m. of the due date. But again, please don't wait that long. It just doesn't look good. Blackboard timestamps everything. So again, I can't help but notice when you're turning work in or how much time is between, let's say, an initial post and the 2 other posts. If it happens within like 12 minutes, suggesting to me you've not spent a whole ton of time on that. It doesn't need to be hours of work you're putting into this, but it's got to be more than just you sat down for 8 minutes and kind of dashed it off. Okay, so we're still in Unit 1. Whoops. And the last thing I'm asking you to do is this really brief questionnaire. It's not a graded thing. It's just so you can kind of take ownership a little bit of being in an online class, and then letting me know if you have any issues that you think might present themselves, like access to the internet or a computer that's your own that you can use kind of like without interruption. Just basic things to make sure you're setting yourself up to be as successful as possible. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up Unit 1 for us. Not super difficult, I don't think, but certainly a variety of different things that you want to spend some time doing. Again, managing your time is really, really important. So maybe you don't do this all at once, but you've set aside some time to do the home page, then in a little while or the next day you do the discussion board, or however it works effectively for you. But again, because Blackboard timestamps things, I can't help but notice if all of the work is being done in a very, very limited window. Maybe you can sort of stumble through, especially in our early unit like this where you're just introducing yourself. But once we get further into the content of the course, working, not giving yourself enough time is really going to, I think, hamper your ability to be successful in the course. All right, so welcome again. This hopefully gives you a little bit sense of our layout here and how we're going to move through our course. Again, coordinating those due dates with the work that's in each of the units. And as always, I hope you're feeling a little bit oriented here, ready to go with the actual creative writing part. And certainly be in touch with me if you have any questions or concerns.